Well, I couldn't let you go without asking you to give us some examples of some interesting protocol situations. You've talked about how, it's more than making sure that people have the right seat at the banquet, but I just thought it'd be interesting to hear some of your war stories about that.
Every year at my professional conference, we kind of have a closed-door commiseration session, a skull session. Names are protected. Names are changed rather to protect the guilty, and tell war stories like that. And I keep telling people, or threatening, when I leave this job, I might write a book about some of the things. And obviously, there are some things I probably shouldn't say. But I'll give you a couple of examples, some humorous and some very serious, about some of the things we've had to do. Some days you pick up the phone and you never know what'll happen. And I remember I got the phone call. Now this is not related. This is related to the strict protocol side of the job. It's not even related to international stuff. One day I got a phone call that Mrs. King had died, the widow of Dr. King, and the governor offered for her to lie in, to her family, for her to lie in state and the Capitol, which was an enormous honor and very historic. When the lying in state actually happened, she became the first female and the first African American ever to lie in that position of honor. And we had 40,000, 50,000 people coming, very cold. I believe it was right at the turn of January to February, very early February morning in 2006. Well, the morning that the lying in state was to happen, and the motorcade was to arrive, the casket was to arrive by horse-drawn carriage, I did my morning walkabout. We had worked so hard for about 48 or 72 hours once we finally got the green light. I walked outside, and we had a bank of portable toilets down by City Hall, which were a necessity because we had a queue that stretched from the Capitol all the way down to the courthouse and back down around to the MARTA station. So you can imagine how many thousands of people that were. I looked at those porta potties, and they were from the King Company, a company named King. Well, from a protocol perspective, that's not something I wanted to face. I mean, I didn't want to have to go to somebody in our media shop or whatever, and there, as all of these people are coming to pay their respects to Mrs. King, one of the most gracious, magnanimous persons and a champion in her own right, that there were the King portable toilets. I thought it was the wrong message to send. So here we are at 7 in the morning running out with poster board and tape to put that over. So, sometimes you get instances like that. Other times, I mean, I got a phone call, and what happens when a foreign national dies here and you have to repatriate their remains? The first time I ever did it, somebody that one of the consuls called and said, hey, we had a citizen die. We need to get some certification to get this person on a plane. Well, I don't mean to make light of the situation, but you don't train for that. How do you know who to get that from? And so you just say, okay, well, let me get back to you, because there was there was nothing in the training manual that said, okay, Chris, when that happens, turn to page 4.7 and go these steps. And so, you learn. You call the coroner's office. You have to get death certificates. You have to then work with the airlines. I mean, there are very detailed things that you do and you don't have to, or you do have to do in very logical progressions. Now, I have been, I'll tell you this story and I'll take out all the names, but there was sometimes you just shake your head and go, did that really get said? And you just have to smile. There was a new consul general came to Atlanta a few years back, and this consul general was going in for a courtesy meeting with another official. And when I had briefed this official, and it was just a very standard, we do those all the time with dozens of people. The governor, the commissioner, the lieutenant governor, secretary, it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, there's dozens, presidents of universities, whatever. We try to take the new consuls around and let them meet people. This one particular person briefed them, gave them the person's dossier and said, here's what they're doing, here's their biography. And they shook hands with this person when they come in the door and said, "Oh, by the way," and I introduced them. I said, "Oh, by the way, I met your wife at some event." And this person looked at them very puzzled. And the principal kept saying, "Yeah, I met," and insisted. And when said, "Well, I don't have a wife." And this person kept saying, "No, are you sure?" Asked the question, "Are you sure?" And this particular consul general said, "I'm very, very sure I don't have a wife." And so you can't plan for those kinds of moments. You just step back and you smile and you just go about your business because it is what it is, and you go on about it. But, I mean, and then there are some very serious things that you do on a day-to-day basis that a lot of times never get reported in the news, or they never, they never make their way into things, but you do them because it's part of your job, and it's also part of creating the right environment for international governments to succeed here. So maybe it is something that's very serious about what happens when a foreign national runs afoul of the law, and we have to worry about their rights under the Vienna Convention for Consular Relations. What happens when we have to work on extradition type things. That's a very serious issue. Another serious issue, but much more pleasant, what happens when you have an ambassador or a minister come to town? I mean, I've had the pleasure of welcoming dozens upon dozens upon dozens. I mean, we're talking well over 100 now, knocking 150 in the last 4 years. What I call the VVIPs, ambassadors, ministers, presidents, vice presidents, prime ministers, those level people. What happens when they come to town? What happens when they come to town for 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 hours? What do you do? How do you help put together a program? And that's a very big honor. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the biggest honors I had happened on almost back-to-back weekends last year. We have the Aga Khan, His Highness the Aga Khan, and then right behind that we have the Secretary General of the United Nations. And, you know, how privileged am I to be able to represent the state of Georgia, the citizens, and the governor, to go on board that plane when they first touch down, shake that person's hand and say, on behalf of the governor and the citizens of the state of Georgia, welcome to our state, and be that first interaction, that first portal into our state. That's a big honor. To walk off a plane and stand there at an arrival ceremony as the national anthems are being played, because you've been dispatched as part of your job to represent the governor and by extension the people, the citizens of Georgia, and welcome somebody. And that's the first entry they have into the state. That's the first impression. To ride with them as they come into town, to plan events with them, to welcome them to the governor's mansion or to the Capitol or to these offices. That's a big, big, big responsibility, but at the same time, what a privilege to be able to do that. And then be able, you know, years hence, to be able to tell stories about, oh, let me tell you about the time that I was planning the luncheon for the Secretary General of the United Nations. Let me tell you about the time we welcomed the President of Ireland to the Capitol. Let me tell you about the G8 summit when we stood out on the tarmac and got sunburned, but we were there for 9 hours as world leader after world leader after world leader arrived in our state for the summit. So those are all wonderful experiences and things I'll take with me and treasure whenever I move on.